they circle the wagons around themselves and they try to hide what's going on in the school system from parents and taxpayers. And in many cases, they're very good at it. We were willing to take that gamble because we were very confident that the school system was changing massive amounts of grades. They were graduating kids who could not read because we had teachers that were telling us that. Baltimore City Schools was one of the most funded, but one of the lowest performing large school systems in America. So I went from being called a racist, hating Black people, and trying to destroy the city to getting 2 NAACP awards for the work that we have done in the city. And the national chapter of the NAACP is in.
Welcome to Stay in the Fray podcast. I'm your host, Ryan. This is where headlines get hit hard, hypocrisy gets shredded, and the absurd are laughed at. If you want comfort, this isn't your place. If you want blunt and unfiltered, I'm your guy. Join me in the fray.
All you gotta do is just listen up.
Thanks for reaching out. This is something I'm trying to do more of, which is to talk with people who know a hell of a lot more than I do, that have experienced things, that have taken it upon themselves to find what we're going to talk about today, instead of me just rambling to the camera and yelling and being frustrated by things like this. I can't wait to hear from you. Just really fast, I know this is the boring part for people, but just to tell them what you do. You are the lead investigative reporter for what's called Project Baltimore, Fox 45 up there in Baltimore. And this is a look into the Maryland's public education system. What I'm seeing: fraud, deception, lies, uninformed parents, which is one of the biggest things for me that has me all rattled. And until you and I really talked or emailed, I was completely unaware. And it's kind of like Nick Shirley. And that's how we kind of connected, is that I did a show about Nick Shirley and you noticed that, and I'm just baffled. So I want to let you just kind of go. You've been doing similar things to what kind of Nick did, but in a whole different light. So just jump in. Project Baltimore. What
Sure.
was something that motivated you to do this? What did you see that made you start this?
So first off, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Chris. Thank you.
And I think so let me just back up a second. So what Project Baltimore is we're a team of 5 journalists, and there's 2 photographer editors, 2 producers, and myself as the reporter. And we focus on one topic, and that one topic that we focus on is public education. And the reason that we're focusing on public education, and we've been doing this since January of 2017, we've been doing it now for more than 9 years,
Wow.
is that we could see back in January of 2019 that Baltimore City Schools was one of the most funded, but one of the lowest performing large school systems in America. And I was an investigative reporter in Washington, D.C., and I was working for the ABC News affiliate when I got this call from my parent company, which is Sinclair Broadcast Group. And they said, listen, do you want to run this thing called Project Baltimore? And here's what we want. We want to answer the questions, how and why. How has Baltimore City become the most funded, but one of the lowest performing large school systems in the country? And why is this happening? Why is it accepted? Why is it allowed to happen? So 9 years later, I wrote a book called A Failure Factory: How Baltimore City Public Schools Deprive Taxpayers and Students of a Future. And I wrote the book because after doing this for 9 years, I think that we have answered the questions, how and why is this happening? And why this is valuable for the entire country is because we are seeing the same educational philosophies that have taken root in Baltimore spread across all of America. And we've been seeing it for years, where taxpayers are putting massive amounts of money into public education, but the student academic outcomes are not improving, staying stagnant, going down. And the how and the why in Baltimore is the same how and the why for the rest of the country. And so that's why I wrote this book, because I'm trying to educate people. I'm trying to let people know what's going on, because a society cannot thrive unless the public education system is properly educating its students.
100%. And I think as a parent, that's, I mean, when I started looking into you, your work, what you've been doing, the book, admittedly, I've got it on order. I've looked into it. I've been in the middle of a move, as we
Yeah.
mentioned. So I've got stuff, boxes, books everywhere. So, but from what I have looked into with the book and your work, I mean, it's one of the biggest things is what do parents need to know? How do they not know this? Blah blah blah. I mean, there's so much to talk about. And I'm glad you jumped to the book because I was going to get there. Do you want to mention? I'll put links up all over the place, but do you want to just go right off the bat and just go ahead and mention where you can get it? I mean, I'm assuming it's just everywhere, Amazon, all the places.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, anywhere books are sold.
Great.
If your local bookstore isn't
And
carrying it,
and
they
your
can certainly
website, of
order it.
course.
Yeah, I have a website, chrispapst.com, ChrisPapst, and all my social media accounts, which are just basically Chris Papst. And,
Got it.
I hope that people, do pick up a copy of the book after we do this show,
Yeah, for sure.
because I want people to know what's going on, and I want them to be frustrated, and I want them to be angry, because we need to improve this situation. We cannot continue to dump massive amounts of taxpayer dollars into public education and not get a return on that investment. The first part is happening. Taxpayers, if you're listening, you're doing your part. You are putting the money into public education, but the public schools are not holding up their end of the bargain.
I like the way you said that. I mean, I'm literally looking at the stuff that's covered in the books, and you're talking about the attendance fraud, inflated grades. I mean, the leadership failures all across the board. It just to cover it up. I mean, I guess my first question to you in all of this is the intentional cover up, the intentional protection of what's happening there. Was there a flag, something that first trying to trigger you going, yeah, this isn't just this isn't a mistake. This is something that people are actually attempting to do. Was there a moment? Go ahead.
So we have seen over 9 years, the 9 years failure factory covers that the school systems, and it's not just Baltimore. So what I said that in 2017, we started doing Baltimore City, and we did, and we're still doing that today, but we really have branched out to the counties around Baltimore and all of Maryland. And what we have seen is that these school systems exist to protect themselves. They circle the wagons around themselves, and they try to hide what's going on in the school system from parents and taxpayers. And in many cases, they're very good at it. And I'll give you an example. So in January of 2017, I got here, and I didn't know anybody. I'd never been to Baltimore, didn't live in Baltimore. And I did what investigative journalists do. And I started looking at data. So there's 165 schools in Baltimore City. And I pulled the state test scores for all of those schools and began analyzing them. And what I found was there were 6 schools in Baltimore City that did not have any students proficient in any subject. Hundreds of kids,
Zero.
six entire schools, 0 students in those 6 schools.
Wow.
So we do this story. It was Project Baltimore's first big viral story, and it blows up, absolutely blows up, as it should. That's an alarming
Right.
headline.
I
And
was gonna say.
after the story breaks, I get teachers from Baltimore City that start reaching out to me, and they're like, "Yeah, this is true. We're graduating kids that can't read." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Yeah, these kids can't do math or reading, but they're still graduating." And I'm like, "Well, how are they graduating?" And the teachers are saying that an administrator will go into their grade book, change a failing grade to passing to get these kids to their senior year and get them high school diplomas. So when we started reporting this, and in Failure Factory, I interview the teachers. Their testimonies are in the book. You can hear it from them. And I started getting more and more of these teachers reaching out to me. And we started thinking, okay, this is probably a pretty big problem. So in November of 2017, I filed a public records request with Baltimore City Public Schools. And I requested emails and documents related to grade changing, internal investigations, things like that. School system writes back, they don't give us anything. They say basically go away. So the next month, December of 2017, we sued Baltimore City Public Schools for violating Maryland's Public Information Act. In February of 2019, it goes to court. I testified for a few hours in front of the circuit court judge. And then in March of 2019, the judge issues her ruling. This is where I answer your question, but I had to get here.
No, this is fascinating to me. No, keep going.
So the judge issues her ruling, and the judge says that Baltimore City Schools, and these are her words, willfully and knowingly violated the law by not handing over the documents. What the judge said, a Baltimore City judge, said that the school system knew it was breaking the law by not handing over the documents, but they did it anyway. And in her words, they did it to hide potential wrongdoing.
Of course.
So the judge really laid the smackdown on Baltimore City schools. And she forced the school system to hand over everything that we originally requested a year and a half prior. And she made the school system pay $200,000 of our legal fees. She made them pay our entire legal fees. So what we had here was a situation where the school system knew they were going to lose this case. They knew it. There was no way that they weren't going to lose.
Right.
And they chose to go forward with it anyway, costing taxpayers not just $200,000 we get paid, but all the money the school system had to pay their attorneys to go to court. Okay, so this cost taxpayers a lot of money. I could have hired a lot of teachers. And when we got the documents, what we got was 8,000 emails, many of which were teachers that were telling their administrators, quit going into my rule book and changing my grades. This student did not pass my class. How did this student graduate from my class and go to the next grade? How did they get a diploma? And really what that moment showed us is the lengths to which public schools will go to conceal what is actually happening inside of public schools. And the only reason we know this is because of Fox 45 being willing to sue the school system. Because we were willing to call their bluff and say, no, you have these documents. We know you have them. You have to hand them over. And if you don't, we're going to sue you. And a judge is going to force you to hand them over.
Is that unusual, you think, for a network to be involved with something like this? Or is that something that you're seeing more and more of?
It's rare because it's expensive.
Well, right, sure.
And you're not guaranteed that if you win, you get attorney's fees. And
True.
no, we did. So this lawsuit didn't cost us anything, but had we not gotten those attorney's fees and had we not won, $200,000 for any organization is a good amount of money.
Right,
and
sure.
We were willing to take that gamble because we were very confident that the school system was changing massive amounts of grades. They were graduating kids who could not read because we had teachers that were telling us that. And the emails, if you want to read the emails from those teachers to their administrators, they're in the book Failure Factory.
Great.
If you want to see the internal investigations, they're in Failure Factory. It's all there. I put it right out there for everybody to see and read.
I cannot wait to see. I mean, seriously, I would have already had it done if life hadn't stepped in the way. But so tell me about these teachers. The teachers, because that was one of my questions, is the whistleblowers, if you will. Everybody uses that term. The people that are helping you with this. I imagine you need that to pursue any of it. Is it mostly teachers, or is there anybody else involved that kind of sees what you're seeing that would come from somewhere maybe that people wouldn't expect?
Well, there's a lot of people within the school system. So in the book, I interview nurses, I interview administrators, I interview teachers, parents, students. I interview students who graduated who told me they don't think they deserve to graduate. And, a lot of it with the people within the school system, there's a lot of really, really good people in the school system, and they know what's happening and they know it's not right. But they also have very good paying jobs. They have pensions, they have health care, they have families. And there's a lot of retaliation in public schools. And anybody listening to us right now that works or has ever worked in public schools, you know that if you come out, the chances of being retaliated against are very high. And a lot of public school officials don't want to take that chance, so they don't. But they come to me and they'll do an interview with me, and they just do it anonymously. And what we do from our standpoint as investigative journalists is that we make sure that we background them appropriately. I get their IDs, I get pay stubs. I make sure they are who they say they are. I try to find them on the school's websites. I do everything like that. And then we'll interview them and they'll tell us what's going on. They'll tell us that their grades are being changed. They'll tell us that, instances of fights and kids bringing weapons to schools are not getting documented because the school superintendents don't want to make the schools look dangerous. So they don't document what's going on.
Wow.
This is what's happening in our schools.
Yeah. I wanted to get to the violence. I saw that you talk about that in the book as well. And overall, but I mean, that's being covered. It just seems to me like, the obvious question that anybody would ask, especially parents, are, Why is this happening? Why are we letting this happen? And I mean, the easy answer is just trying to, I guess, go through the motions. What would you give to a parent that says, why is this okay to so many people? Does that make sense?
Money.
Okay. Oh, so it is all, that's what I was getting at. It's all
Money.
It's all about the money.
So Baltimore
as
City
usual.
Schools. Yeah. And you just got to follow the money. And
Yeah.
Baltimore City Schools has a $1.8 billion budget.
Right.
So $1.8 billion goes into that school system. That's this year. Next year, it's going to be $1.9 billion.
Wow.
Because it keeps going up,
going
even
up.
though enrollment is going down and student outcomes don't improve. And when you have this giant organization, this public school systems that have 10,000 employees, Baltimore City has about 10,500 employees, somewhere in there. You have these massive school systems, they have a lot of power and they have a lot of votes and they have a lot of money and they have a lot of people making that money and they want to keep making that money. So their objective is to, what we have seen in reporting on this for 9 years, their objective is to maintain the status quo and to maintain the power and structure of their organization. I mean, that's why this is happening. Now, if you want to get more granular into it or even more surface level, you can kind of go either way here. The reason it's allowed to happen is because
That's
in a
the
city,
question. Yeah.
in a city like Baltimore, the elected officials are simply not holding the school system accountable. And they're not saying, hey, we're giving you a lot of extra money. And we can actually go over the numbers if you want. I can tell you exactly how much money. But and we're not seeing academic outcomes improve. You need to do better or you're going to get fired. Like, that's not happening in this city.
Give me some numbers.
Some rough numbers? Yeah, I can do
some
that.
rough, for taxpayers. Yeah.
Sure. So Failure Factory goes from 2017 to 2025. Those are the
Okay.
years that the book covers. And in 2017, Baltimore City Schools' budget was $1.3 billion. By 2025, 8 years later, the budget was $1.8 billion. So the budget increased by 38%
Wow.
in just 8 years. Now, let's talk about graduation rates. The graduation rate in 2017 was 70%. The graduation rate in 2025 was 71%. So the school system got a 38% increase in funding and graduation rates 1 point.
Wow.
Math proficiency in 2026 in today's world, if you don't have good math skills, you're in trouble. The math proficiency rate in Baltimore City Schools in 2017 was 11%. 89% of kids in Baltimore City Schools in 2017 were not proficient in math. And this is the entire school system.
Wow.
8 years later, with a 38% increase in funding, math proficiencies were 12%. Went up a point. So you got a 38% increase in funding. You have a 1 point increase in graduation rates, and you have a 1 point increase in math proficiencies. Now, that is really why Failure Factory is important, because in Maryland, taxes are going up, fees are going up, and much of it is going to public education. This state has decided that it's going to put all of its chips into public education, which is fine. But what the taxpayer isn't getting is a better educated child.
Right. Well, sure.
Now, one more thing to point out here. So people who are listening to us right now, they may have listened to that data and they thought to themselves, whoa. How do you have 71% of your kids graduating and 12% of your kids are proficient in math?
Yeah. That was my
How
question.
does that happen? Well, it's very simple. It happens because the school systems are less focused on educating kids and they're more focused on acquiring the funding. And the data is telling us that. You have a 38% increase in funding over 8 years. That's where you're putting your energy. You're very good at acquiring funding. Anytime they talk about funding in Annapolis, you got the
Right.
school and teachers and the union, and they're all down there rah-rahing for more money. That's where they're putting their energy, and they're getting it. Where they're not putting their energy is to educating kids, because we can see the outcomes. The outcomes aren't there.
Is it just across the board? I mean, like I said, I'm looking at all these crazy attendance and just everything. Is it for people like myself, and I admit to being naive to the topic, obviously. I mean, this is just, I'm just kind of, if I have this expression, it's just because I am just fascinated that this is happening. And it's just somebody that's never even thought about it on my end. And so is it just across the board numbers that they're forcing so that they continue to receive the funding? I mean, I know that sounds like the most basic question, but is it as simple as that? They're just skewing numbers to make sure they get to what the state requires.
So they're skewing numbers for this purpose. A school in Maryland and throughout the entire country, they do not get funding to educate kids. That's not, a lot of people think schools get funding to educate students. That
You
is
would
not
think.
true. Schools get funding to enroll students. The incentive is to enroll the student, not educate the student. So once a student is enrolled, the school will get the money for that kid. It does not matter if that kid learns how to read. It doesn't matter if that child is proficient or not proficient in science or reading or math. The school's already gotten the money because the child is enrolled. So that is something that, as I'm doing my book tour for Failure Factory, that I'm talking to a lot of people about, that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Schools do not get money to educate kids. Okay, if there's one thing that you take away from the book, I think that's it. So we have an educational system that is not incentivized to educate kids. It's incentivized to enroll kids. So now let's talk about your question. Why would they fudge numbers? Why would they pass kids that don't deserve to pass?
Yeah, but it's just
Because if you
enrolled.
pass the child, you're more likely to stay enrolled. Because, if you see light at the end of the tunnel, if you're a kid, you see potential graduation, you're more likely to stay in school. And what the schools are doing, and what we know they're doing, because we can see it in the data, I mean, you have 71% graduation rates and 12% math proficiencies, is they're moving the kids from grade to grade. They're changing their grades. They're matriculating them through the school process, and they don't have the skills that they need. And they're doing that because the motivation is to acquire the funding. And all you have to do is keep the kid enrolled. And if you are a principal or you are a teacher, and every single one of your kids is proficient in math, or 0% of your kids are proficient in math, you get the same amount of money.
Right, as long as they're enrolled.
As long as they're enrolled. That's
So
all
they
that
just
matters.
they feed them through the grades and don't care. And like what I can't wait to look into, and I'll ask you a little bit about it, is the interview with the students who came out and said, quite frankly, look, I don't know how I graduated. I don't know how I passed. First off, it's not doing them any to just feed them through. But is it a large number of students that are concerned about it, or do you think that what do you think the actual graduation rate would be if they actually had to hold them to the standard?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't even have to tell you my. I can tell you what is. So after we won the lawsuit that we talked about, where we had to sue Baltimore City Schools, after we won that lawsuit, the Inspector General for Education of Maryland opened an investigation, and it came out in 2022. So of the 8 years that Failure Factory covers, 5 of those years is this grade changing investigation that started with those 6 schools with no kids proficient, and it ended with the Inspector General's report in 2022. And what he found was, over a 4-year period, there were 12,500 and I think 41 grades that were improperly changed in Baltimore City. Now, this is not B to A, this is not C to B, this is F to passing.
Right.
These are failing to passing grades. And these kids did not do any additional work. They did not hand any homework or do any more tests or anything like that. Their grades were just simply changed from a failing to a passing. 12,500. And what he found was as many as 10% of kids at some high schools were graduating who did not earn it. They were given their diplomas. They did not earn their diplomas. So how many kids graduated who should not have? The Inspector General for Education puts that number at about 10%. But the Inspector General for Education in his report also said his numbers are only as accurate as what the school gives him. And what we've already determined is that the school doesn't want to give over documents. We had to sue them to get the documents that we got.
Wow. Yeah. Do you think that, do you have any students that, do you think were like, no, I'm not graduating, and that demanded to, I don't want to focus too much on that, but I'm just curious if anybody
it's a huge question, because
you're
it's valuable. So
you're young. You get a free pass. I mean, how many people might take that?
So the student that we interviewed in the book, I'll just tell you a little bit about him. So at the school that he was at, there are some sources I had there, some teachers that said, we're graduating these kids that do not deserve to be walking across the stage. And they leaked to me the transcripts of these kids. And what I could see was that this one particular kid, his senior year, missed 120 days of school. Now, there's 180 days in a school year. This particular student missed 120, but on his transcript had an address. So I went to his home and I knocked on his door. So this was after he had already walked across the stage. He was no longer a student in Baltimore City Public Schools. He was a 20-year-old man with no job. So I walk up and I knock on his door and he answers it. And I got my cameras all around me and I tell him, I'm recording this. Can I ask you a few questions about your time at the high school? And he goes, sure. And, you can read the entire transcript of the interview in the book, but he said to me, he's like, I didn't do any work to graduate, but I'm happy that I did. Now, and that's really where these kids are, because I think his actual quote to me was, if I had the book right in front of me, I would read it to you, but I don't. I think his quote was, I never thought that I would graduate. I'm happy that I did.
Yeah. And I can't blame the kids.
Well, no, it's not the kid's fault, because he was set up to understand that you're going to graduate no matter what you do.
Right.
But the other sad part of that is he's 20 years old. He's in the prime of his life, and he's at home at 1 o'clock on an afternoon and has absolutely no job. And I asked him, are you going to get a job? And he goes, I'm thinking about it. I mean, that is the problem, because he was a very nice kid. And he was a man. He was 20. He wasn't a kid. He was a very nice man. And he agreed to talk to me. And, we didn't announce that we were coming. We just knocked on the door and he answered it, and he was shocked, but he still came out and he was honest. And I appreciated that.
That's nice, at least that he was able to say it. I mean, it helped you. I mean, I want to know what kind of pushback you've gotten, because my understanding, and I mean, I can only imagine, is that there's some people not so happy about what you do and what you've done. Have you had any kind of like threats? I mean, obviously, if you have some big stories, then I'd love to know them. But what kind of pushback do you get, and where is it coming from? And is it ever kind of made you go, maybe we need to do something a different way?
Sure. When we started Project Baltimore in January of 2017, and I don't know exactly how many people are watching this podcast or listening to it, but I'm a white guy, and I go into this city that it's a very black city, and the school system is 93% minority students.
Right.
93%. So here comes this white guy coming into the city, and he starts reporting on all these things and suing the school system and exposing how they got all these schools with no kids proficient in anything, and talking about how grades are being changed and kids are graduating that don't deserve it. And in the beginning, we got a significant amount of pushback. And in Failure Factory, I put the voicemails and emails in there for people to read.
Perfect.
And you can see them.
You laid it out nicely.
The hatred that I got, the names that I was being called racist, and all these other things.
Of course, all the buzzwords.
And I knew that going into it. I knew that was going to happen. But at the same time, I also felt that this is a valuable mission, and what we're doing is important. So we stuck with it and we kept going. And there were 3 times where the threats got a little bit too much and we had to call the police, and the police had to go find somebody and say, hey, are you really serious about this? That type of thing. We did that 3 times. And those, I think, ended in about 2019, maybe 2020. And then I'll say this, that after about 4 years, all of that stuff stopped. And I think what happened was we simply earned the trust and respect of the community. And we said to the community, listen, we're going to come in and we're going to do hard-hitting journalism, and it's going to be real, but it's going to be honest, and it's going to be fair. And in the beginning, it was a shock because nobody was used to seeing it. But after 4 or 5 years, people started to say, you know what? I think this guy does have the best interests at heart, and he really is exposing some pretty important things. And our kids aren't getting the education that they need. And all that stuff stopped, man. All that, I haven't had to deal with that stuff for a long time. So much, in fact, that in 2023, the Maryland State Chapter NAACP gave me its Vanguard Award for the work that is in Failure Factory. And then in 2025, the Baltimore County chapter of the NAACP gave me their Excellence in Education Award for the work that is in Failure Factory. So, I mean, think about that transcript, what happened there. So I went from being called a racist, hating Black people, and trying to destroy the city, to getting 2 NAACP awards for the work that we have done in the city. And the national chapter of the NAACP is in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from my perspective,
Randallstown. I was looking at your credentials here, my man.
Yeah. So
And we're on the
Randallstown
same
is the
we're on the
Baltimore.
same page. I was just about to ask you when you brought that up, and it's amazing to me, and it's so refreshing to hear that they're recognizing you for this, because again,
It was really an honor. Yeah, the
you're a racist.
Randallstown
How dare
chapter
you? Yeah.
is the Baltimore County one, and then the state chapter NAACP was the 2023 one.
Okay.
And it was a great honor, and it really just lets us know that, you know, even though times were tough for a while, that we think that we're doing the right thing and we're trying to help. And I think that most people are seeing that, but not the people that we're reporting on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Oh,
they
of course.
yeah.
I've done a lot of content about inner city education, lack of fathers. How do we help the crime statistics, things like that? I'm called everything too. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, I'm the one that's trying to actually help and get to the root of the problem, versus just turning a blind eye to it.
Sure. So, but
Who's the
Failure
real
Factory
racist?
it explains the root of the problem. The root of the
Yep.
problem is a failing public education system.
Yeah.
And the point that I make in the book is Baltimore City, I believe, is at the end stages of what a failing public education system does to a community and does to a society. Every single year, Baltimore City is labeled as one of the most dangerous, deadliest
Yep.
cities, not just in America, but in the Western Hemisphere. It's 20 to 25% of the people live in poverty.
See them
You
on the
got
lists. All the lists,
yeah.
they're on there.
Baltimore is always on there. And
Yep.
this city used to have nearly 1 million people. Now it's down to about 500,000. So
Yep.
people are getting out of the city. And I contend that those issues are not the problem. Those issues are a symptom of the problem. The problem is that for generations, the public education system has simply not been providing its own people with the education that they need. And they're not graduating with the skills that are required to get a good job and have a good career.
I mean, and you said earlier, you mentioned, and I can't imagine that it's limited to just Baltimore. You believe that this is widespread.
This is
Agreed.
happening all throughout the country. Well, we know it's not just happening in other urban
Well, sure.
areas like Milwaukee and Detroit.
Yeah, it's not just a few. I mean, I'm
No,
sure,
no,
right?
it's not just those areas. Like the idea of prioritizing the needs of the adults over the needs of the students, that is happening all throughout the country, and we can see it. And what we need to do is that we need to recognize it, and that was the first part of like why I wrote Failure Factory, is to have conversations like this, and hopefully people will hear it and read the book and say, okay, well, I didn't realize that schools don't get money to educate kids; they get money to enroll kids. Maybe we should try to change the incentive base. Maybe we should look. Yeah, maybe we should look at it from a different perspective. You know, things like that, and really start to dig into this, because we can't have more Baltimores. We can't have more Baltimores. We
Right.
have to do better. And even if you're listening to this and you're homeschooling or put your kid in private school or parochial school or Catholic school, whatever it may be, just remember this: 90% of the kids in this country go to public school. And that means 90% of future voters and 90% of future taxpayers are currently in public school. So even if you do not have your kids in public school, just think about how important the public schools are for the future of America.
I mean, couldn't said it better there. I'm finding that something like this, and I hate to bring it back to Nick Shirley, just because again, that's what sparked me, and I, you know, for as much clout as he's gotten, I feel like it did wake a lot of people up to what we're blind to. To compare the two, I've found, and I don't mean to completely jump off topic here, but what I do here a lot is break down this partisan nonsense. Do you find that in what you do with Project Baltimore, that you're finding one side, and we don't have to go into who it does what, but do you find like it's divided, and that people want to, the ones calling you racist are on this side and the ones that aren't are on this side? And do you find that it's a partisan issue, or do you think that was just limited to Minnesota right now?
Oh, of course it's partisan.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
we live in America. We politicize weather in this country.
That's
You
true.
know, we politicize snow. I mean, so I mean,
Yeah,
public
we are, aren't we?
education. Yeah, and so public education is certainly not immune to that. And you have a lot of very powerful political forces that are involved. And again, what's it go back to? Money. There's a lot of money. Now in Baltimore City, one of the things that we're seeing is that this is a city that's controlled by one political party. And it has been controlled by one political party for a very long time. Baltimore City has not had a Republican elected to city council since the 1930s and has not had a Republican elected mayor since the 1960s. So this is a one-party rule city. And I'm not suggesting Republicans have all the answers, but what I am certainly suggesting is that two-party control is better than one-party rule, because in the one-party rule, you have no checks and balances. And that's what we're seeing. And that's where you see the worst school systems in America, that being Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, and Baltimore. They're all one-party rule cities. And it's not because those kids can't learn. It's not because they're incapable of understanding math or English at grade level. It's because their school systems are not held accountable by the public officials and the elected officials in that city. And if the schools aren't going to be held accountable to improve, they're not going to improve. And it's a very easy statement to say because we have decades of data to back it up.
Yeah, and it is that simple. I mean, it's if somebody doesn't go in there and bust it open and hold them accountable, then where's the incentive to change? I mean, these seem so basic, and I think that's where I'm frustrated with myself, because I feel like I'm asking these very bland questions, but it's kind of like I'm so shocked, and that's why I brought up the partisan issue. I'm so shocked that anybody. The same thing with Shirley and all that going on in Minneapolis. I'm so surprised that anybody could sit here and go, "Oh man, I better act like the fraud's not happening, or this now that that Mr. Papst is talking to us about isn't happening, just because I don't want to insult the Black community, or I don't want to insult the Somali community, or I don't want to agree with Republicans, or I don't want." It seems to me like everybody should be able to get on the same page about something like this. And so my goal here, and what I do a lot on this show, is I try and just push this common sense. Like, can we just come together on a few things and start there? So that's kind of why I'm asking these basic questions. So thank you for bearing with me.
That's exactly why I wrote Failure Factory, man, because I don't think people know this stuff. I think that, like, in 2020, America changed, obviously.
Right.
And when school came home, and when the computer came to your house and people saw what was happening, they were really disturbed.
Mhm.
And that shifted the Overton window, and people really started talking about public education. And what I see Failure Factory is the extension of that, because now kids are back in school, and this book is taking you back into school and is showing you exactly what's happening, how the data is manipulated, how the grades are changed, how the kids are matriculated through, where the money is going. All of that is in there. And I just really hope that people pick up a copy of the book and get a hold of me and, start the conversation, write reviews online, get people interested, because this is fixable and we have to fix it.
I mean, it's got to be, it's as simple as awareness. I mean, I'm going to agree completely with you that no one knows. I mean, people are starting to kind of open up a little bit, but I thought there may be a few things here and there, but I think, with Failure Factory, I think I'm excited to get just more details and not stuff that's just, a little bit of too much jargon for people to kind of not all the laws and those. It's like just some text messages. Here's what's really said. And I think people will be able to completely connect with it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna get it rolling here today. Make sure I get it.
Yeah, man, pick up a copy. And
I'm gonna pick up a copy for sure.
I can come right back on, and we can pick up the conversation with the other things, because what we're talking about here, man, this is 25 pages of a 250-page book.
Yes, yeah, I know.
So
I could sit here and talk to you about it for forever. As anybody that listens to the show knows, I can ramble. And again, I'm back into a new office and a new studio, and so it's not as aesthetically pleasing. So I appreciate you for kind of bearing with me on this episode. So I would love to read it, get you back on in a little while, and then I'll be more knowledgeable about it, and hopefully a couple people, and it'll spread. And that's I'm sure what your goal is. If you could, real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. I hate to do it. Cameras off, and you had maybe one thing that parents could take away from the book, your investigation, your just this idea. Is there one thing that can fix it? Is there one thing that you want people to take away from listening to us or from reading your book? It's just one thing. I know that sounds basic again.
Well, the one thing would be that you need to be involved. If you have kids, be in the school. Just know the teacher. know the principal, make sure that they know that you're there. And that is how you help your family. To help America, and I mean that fully, to help America,
Yeah.
we have to vote for people that are going to hold the school systems accountable. And it's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a, hey, if you're going to raise my taxes and you're going to raise my vehicle registration fees and all these other things, and you're going to give
Right.
most of that money to a public school system, I would expect you to hold that public school system accountable if the academic outcomes don't improve. That's what we need. We need warriors that are going to do that, that are going to make sure that your tax dollars are not wasted, but most importantly, that the lives of these kids are not wasted.
Yeah.
And what we said earlier in the show, that the school systems are prioritizing the needs of the adults over the needs of the students. Yet the failure factory in this 8 years, I think I lay out the case for why that is absolutely happening. And I'm using data to show it and anecdotes from teachers and administrators and parents and students to show that that is indeed happening. Because what we can see is that many more adults are being hired to work in the school systems. They're getting very good salaries, but the kids are suffering and the kids' academics are not improving. So if there's anything that's improving in the school systems, it is the money and the number of adults that are being employed. It's not the kids. So where is the focus? Focus isn't the kids.
100%. But what happens, it leads to other elements of these kids' lives and that affect other people's lives around them. The communities continue to have issues, and we all know what that is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, whether it's violence or this or that. I mean, if the kids aren't prepared, they're not going to do well, and then they're going to turn to other things. And so education to me would be, I think it's education, and I think it's also full families. That's a whole different discussion. I think that's 1A and 1B to help in the communities. One last thing, I just remember something. I can't let you go without asking, how high up do you think this goes? And I know we've said that it's everywhere, and I can see that 100%. Does it go to a federal level as high? I mean, do people at that level see this around the country, and is it something that we need to hold them accountable as well, or is it pretty much kind of local? Does that make sense?
Sure. I think it goes to all public officials because schools are funded by federal, state, and local dollars. So your tax
Right.
dollars, whether you give it to the federal government, the state government, or your local government, a portion of that is going to the public school system. So I would argue that they are all accountable. All of them should be looking at these public schools saying, how can we improve them and how can we make them better? And I think that what we have seen in public education over the past 20 years is we haven't seen any changes structurally in how schools are put together. Now, we are seeing a school choice movement spreading across the country. And I think it does go back to 2020 and people saying that, okay, we can't continue to do this because people saw a little bit about what was going on.
Mhm.
And the school choice movement is expanding. I think it's like 17 states now have adopted some sort of universal school choice. And what you're going to probably see is that over the next couple of years, that those states are going to see probably better academic outcomes than the other states because you're going to have a certain amount of parents and students that take advantage of those school choice programs and go to better schools and get a better education. We've also seen it in the big, beautiful bill that passed last year
Mhm.
by Donald Trump, that there are these voucher scholarships, these private investment voucher scholarship system
Right.
that
Yeah.
has been created. And that is a school choice option. So far, 28 states have said they're going to opt into that program.
It's great.
Maryland is not one of them. So this is going to be a lot of money that is going to be going to education in the states that opt into it. But the people are going to be able to use the money for the educational services that they want. And in a state like Maryland, Maryland wants to control. Maryland wants to tell you how the education dollars are going to be spent. They don't want you deciding how your education dollars are going to be spent. So those movements are certainly happening in the country right now.
Awesome. That's and I think that's a good spot to kind of end on, and then hopefully you'll give me a chance we can pick it back up down the road and
Yeah.
go from there. Like I said, what I do to end here with my peeps that watch, and they're more, not to insult my people, But they like my feedback is that they enjoy the dumbed down version. And what I mean by that, of course, is again, they can come here and listen for 15 minutes to me. You give them just enough of what they need because people are busy. People don't have time to research. I'm going to try and do my best to do that for them. And what I really like about you and what our conversation was, and then what I'm hearing that this book is going to be, again, can't wait to check it out, is that exactly that you're not trying to sit here and overwhelm anybody. People need to be, the first step is awareness, and you move it up, and then everybody, accountability, you get to there. And I think that's something that I think people will take away from this conversation. So I'm very, very happy about it. So I'm going to push the book everywhere. I'm going to push your other ones. I see you have a few other ones out there that we didn't talk about.
I do.
I have a master's in creative writing, which most of my people know. And so I've noticed there was a novel, so I'm intrigued by that as well. We'll talk about that later. But I'll push all of it, and I'll make sure that everybody knows where to get it. So
Thank you.
I know you've got work to do. I've got house to unbox and unpack, and I can't wait to get this out. And I know everybody will enjoy this. And you're starting to see this country kind of open its eyes a little bit to a lot that's happening. If we can just stop yelling at each other for 2 seconds, maybe, especially after the State of the Union last night. That was entertaining to say the least. So, but Chris, it was an absolute blast. You're the type of person I really wanted to get on here. Thank you for taking the time to do it. So I'm going to push that book. And again, tell us what it is.
Yeah, book's called Failure Factory: How Baltimore City Public Schools Deprive Taxpayers and Students of a Future. You can pick it up anywhere. And if you do and you get a chance to read it, please reach out to me, let me know, and let's keep the conversation going.
Yep, you got a new fan, so I'll check it out and hope to have you on soon.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All you gotta do is just listen up.